So let's get emotional today, and I'm going to talk about 8 things that I had to go deep on emotionally in order to heal. So make sure you watch to the end, because this is really going to cover the whole landscape of emotional healing that I had to do during my recovery. I'd been trying to heal for decades, and as the years passed, my health got worse and worse. And I'd invested a lot of time and emotion trying to get better. And despite all this best effort, I entered into a very long period of being housebound with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia and hypothyroid. And then alongside all that, a doctor told me that because I had Ehlers-Danlos loss, that recovering from chronic fatigue would be very difficult for me. And I think unconsciously I'd taken this all on board, and at some point in my journey I completely lost hope. And I really wanted to get better, but over time and all the experiences I had, I just got to a point that I didn't think anything was going to work. In fact, healing itself seemed like this mystery thing that all the planets needed to align for it to happen. And it felt like a runaway train and I couldn't get off. And that was a huge sense of sadness and stress for me, because I couldn't find a way to end the pain and the suffering that I was going through. It took a bit of work to recultivate my belief in my ability to heal, but once I did, it gave me this renewed sense of endurance. And the fear subsided because I knew at the end of the day that there was a finality to what I was experiencing, that it would end and I would heal. And that is really the power of belief. I had a lot of anger and resentment towards the people in my life during that time. And there were a small number of people that I found incredibly triggering. So if I spent any time with them, I would be reliving the experience for days with what they'd said, how they'd behaved. And because I couldn't avoid these people, I really had to look at what it was about them and the way that they said things that upset me so much. Because so much of what enraged me was based on my perception of their behaviour. Taking responsibility for my own feelings when it came to relationships and my own perceptions of what they said actually gave me a huge amount of power. And it also meant that instead of it triggering me, I knew that I had a lot more control over how I felt than I'd given myself credit. I'd made a lot of decisions in my health recovery that hadn't been the wisest. And a lot of the treatments that I'd chosen to go with had actually made my health significantly worse. And so this meant that I really stopped trusting myself. I stopped trusting that I could find the right thing, but I also stopped trusting my body. And I know it's an exhausting place to be, because you're always on high alert with your body. Any change of symptoms, you're always expecting things to get worse. You don't believe that it's capable of recovering. And then when you stop trusting yourself, you're always doing research all the time, spending too much time on screens, always thinking that you're missing something fundamental. And I got to a point that I was so exhausted that I realized that all the mistakes that I'd made over the years had taught me a lot, but also that my body had been through a lot. So actually to open up to a bit of compassion for my body and rebuild the trust that needed to be there. So I felt let down by a lot of people on my health journey, and I had so much anger about it. And this anger would play out on a daily basis. The worse my symptoms got, the more anger built up within me. It was only when I got TMJ towards the end of my health recovery that I realized just how much of an impact this anger was having on me. Because with pain conditions and things like TMJ, we carry a lot of tension in the muscles. And anger is one of those things. So think about being angry with someone and your jaw tenses up. I had a choice. I could move through the anger, I could forgive the person that did this to me, or I could stay stuck there and probably still in the pain. And the thing that really helped me forgive was realizing that the forgiveness was for me and not for them. And that meant I could move on with my life. I talked earlier in the video about a lot of the trust that I lost for myself. Well, alongside that loss of trust was really a lot of negative self-talk and a lot of putting myself down. So not only did I put a lot of pressure on myself to heal quickly, But I also disparaged myself for all of the mistakes that I made. I had a lot of regret about the things that I'd done. And I really was being pretty unkind to myself. And that if I could be compassionate towards someone else who might have been going through the journey that I had, why couldn't I be compassionate to myself? And as it turned out, I could. So I started to talk to myself with a bit more kindness. I stopped focusing on what I looked like and really focused on the pain that I'd been through, not in a victim way, not in a self-pitying way, but more honoring the journey that I had really charted during this time of such great uncertainty and low control. And what I found was not only did I feel more at ease with myself, but also I didn't need the reassurance from other people. I had a lot of symptom anxiety and hypervigilance on my health recovery. And this would lead to a lot of searching, a lot of trying to understand what it was that was happening in my body. And what it led to was me making some of the worst decisions for my treatment. And getting out of the fear of symptoms really made my days a lot easier. And by the end of my healing journey, I had really cracked that symptom panic cycle. One of the things I really struggled with was worrying about what would happen to me if I didn't get better. What would happen if the pain got worse? What would happen if my energy got worse? And the thing is, I didn't really know what could happen, but I had a pretty good imagination, and I took myself to some interesting places. And of course, the more anxious I got about the future, the worse my symptoms got. And really, I needed to focus on today, what was happening in that moment. And so when I worked through all the fears and I let go of my vision of what could happen in the future if I didn't get better, I was more able to really focus on healing and take a lot of the stress out of the day-to-day. If you want to know the steps that you can take to gain emotional mastery and start to get out of that fight, flight and freeze, I've put a free training together. The link is in the description. That's going to tell you what you need to do.